It certainly stirs up the most visceral and horrific memories of the October 7th, 2023 attack by Hamas against communities in southern Israel. But that attack itself echoes in my mind as I see what happened in Jammu and Kashmir. Prime Minister Modi has pledged to root out these terrorists. He has the full support of certainly my organization and my country. It is not surprising that when terror strikes India, you will see expressions of solidarity, of support, of sympathy, condolences by leaders of the United States. It certainly stirs up the most visceral and horrific memories of the October 7th, 2023 attack by Hamas against communities in southern Israel that left 1,200 dead and resulted in the capture of 251 individuals, men, women, children, babies, grandmothers, grandfathers. It was a massacre, and it was brutal, and it has left a very deep scar on the people of Israel, and of course has resulted in Israel's furious and totally justified attack against Hamas, which unfortunately is embedded in a civilian population, cynically embedded in a civilian population, which has led to a great number of casualties. But that attack itself echoes in my mind as I see what happened in Jammu and Kashmir just a couple of days ago. Brutal attack, innocent civilians who were vacationing, some on honeymoons, as I recall reading, in the most horrific way. Gunmen coming up and talking to people and then shooting them in the head, clearly singling out Indians, Hindus. I guess there was one Nepalese among the 26 dead, but otherwise they were all Indians. So a targeted series of brutal killings, a terrorist act that I'm sure has shaken India to the core, and I know has also horrified people around the world. The reactions that I've seen from world leaders, pouring in from President Trump, from the Israeli government as well, and from people, common people, not just the leaders of governments, just reacting in horror and in solidarity with India as it faces this enormous trauma and heartache. So in that way, in the fact that it was a terrorist attack against innocent people enjoying life, enjoying the scenery, going about their business or on vacation, people who did not deserve this and who were singled out in a very brutal way to send obviously some kind of political message, one presumes, is in some ways, of course, does have some echoes of what happened on October 7th, 2023 in Israel.
Right. You did mention about, targeting a certain steps, like targeting Indians, you said. Now, do you observe shared tactics in the Lashkar-e-Toiba's operations and Hamas's operations, particularly regarding the targeting of civilians based on religious identity? Here it's the Hindus, in Israel it was the Jews.
Well, yeah, that is, of course, a characteristic of the issues that that terrorists have, as we have seen, have typically held as their motivation is to attack the other, to identify the other as somehow an evil that needed to be wiped out in some genocidal campaign. So it's certainly characteristic of Hezbollah's feeling about Jews. It's certainly characteristic of certain movements that have targeted Hindus and have targeted Indians generally. There are other instances in other parts of the world where other sects people who believe in certain faiths or a certain ethnic background who are targeted specifically because of those characteristics. So yes, in that way there is a real similarity. Obviously, I don't know very much about this resistance movement, as I recall reading, the group that has been identified as responsible for this. But I believe it must have some similar characteristics to other terrorist movements that we've seen that have an extremist, perhaps an extremist religious orientation or an extremist political orientation that must be countered in the most forceful way possible. And I know that Prime Minister Modi has pledged to root out these terrorists, and he has the full support of certainly my organization and my country, and in addition, other friends of India around the world.
Right. Now, just recently, Pakistan's Army Chief General Asim Munir, he characterized Kashmir as Pakistan's jugular vein. He interpreted, this. Can this be interpreted as a warning sign of sorts? What evidence suggests possible cross-border involvement from Pakistan's side? Keeping this speech in mind.
Well, again, it's early days, but it doesn't take too large a stretch of the imagination to imagine that there is, if not outright funding of support for this movement, this terrorist band by elements within Pakistani society or the military or the intelligence services or some agency or another of the government, that at least such a movement, such a force could operate with some degree of freedom in a society that has the clear motivation to drive India out of Kashmir. So it's conceivable. I can't tell you that I know for sure, nor have I seen evidence that this was somehow directed by Pakistan. But again, it's not a big leap of the imagination to understand that there may have been some Pakistani involvement or acceptance of the existence of this terrorist force, because there's a history of terrorist activity that has been either directed by or acting with the full understanding of the authorities in Pakistan, directed at India.
Now, is there a potential connection between the timing of this attack and Pakistan's recent removal from the FATF grey list?
I'm really not an authority on that. It seems to me that that could be some connection, but I also think that there could be a connection with the fact that the American vice president was visiting India at the time, and that maybe there appeared to the terrorists some advantage in doing something at that moment, that it would grab even greater international focus and international attention to whatever horrific cause they appear to be trying to pursue. So I don't know exactly what the motivation was exactly, but I know that a terrorist movement will look for any way that it possibly can gain some PR advantage, and it seems entirely possible that maybe it was because of the move on that financial watch list.
There has been some reportage on how Hamas leaders visited Pakistan recently, following the discovery of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, and now this attack in Kashmir. Is Pakistan reverting to its reputation as an epicenter of terrorism?
Look, we all know the history, and there is a history of terrorist movements connected to elements within the Pakistani society, Pakistani government, military intelligence services that have been implicated quite convincingly, quite credibly, in terrorist acts against India, but against others as well. So it isn't a leap of imagination to bring us to the conclusion that there might be this ongoing trend within certain elements of Pakistani society, either directly under the control of the government or tolerated in some way by elements in the government. Not quite clear how carefully calibrated all these things are, carefully coordinated they all are. But yes, is there some possibility that there continues to exist in Pakistani governing circles those who are very comfortable dealing with extremists, with terrorists who have their own agenda that in some way meshes with the agenda of Pakistan, including an agenda to do whatever it can to destabilize or throw off balance the Republic of India? It is entirely possible. Do I know for sure that this latest incident, this terrorist attack in Kashmir, was connected to some larger movement within Pakistani society? I don't have that evidence clearly, but again, it doesn't require too much imagination to understand that there are elements continuing to exist and continuing to have some influence in that society that tolerate or even support such terrorist acts.
Now, there may not be a lot of reporting on this attack here in the United States, but leaders, including Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Trump, President Putin, they quickly condemned this attack. What message does this international response really convey to India and the world?
Look, I think it's very obvious that certainly increasingly over the last decade or more, India has found itself in a circle of alliances and friendships. Alliance is probably too strong a word because I know there's a proud tradition of independence in Indian foreign policy and a desire to not be seen as an ally of any country, but as friendly toward many countries. But I know that even in that context, the friendships that India has enjoyed and has built, and the partnerships that it has maintained with diverse governments, the United States and Russia hardly being aligned, but both in their own ways having strong relations with India. And I am pleased to see that the American relationship with India has gotten stronger and stronger over time. And I will say that my organization, the American Jewish Committee, has played a role in demonstrating the importance of the strategic partnership, the increasingly important strategic partnership between India and the United States. So it is not surprising that when terror strikes India, you will see expressions of solidarity, of support, of sympathy, condolences by leaders of the United States and France and Arab countries and the State of Israel and Russia toward India and the people of India. So it's not a surprise. It's evidence of the increasing recognition by world powers and by many countries of India's strong role in the world. Its arrival after many years, really at the top tier of world powers, increasingly economically and strategically vital friend and partner of many countries, including the United States.